All right, and according to YouTube, we are now live. Hi. And this is the second week where I'm trying to just jump right into it. And looks like we are good here as far as the sound and picture and everything. So hi, welcome to Critical Q&A. Live. Number 522. Looks like we're good. Yep. All right. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. It's a nice day out. It's a nice day. It's a little cold. It's a little chilly, but it's supposed to be. It's actually not chilly enough, to be honest. It should be significantly more chilly on this November 23rd. Wow, we should have snow. It should be, you know, to rip off a Mormon phrase, it should be whitesome and delightsome right now. I don't think that's actually the phrase. I just mangle it because I think it's hilarious. No updates on Benson. Don't have anything to say on that one, Irene. Sorry. I'm still pretty torn up. Let's flip over to the chat screen so we can see you guys' chat comments as they come up, and let's get to the Q&A box because I should have started with that. Start a Q&A. Please put your questions here. All right, there we go. All right, so we've got the chat. The regular chat box is not where to put the questions. I just created a little box thing, and I think it appears at the top of the chat for you to put your questions in for me. So please do so. Pop that up so I can read it as they come in, and then as the commentary comes on, it will pop up on the screen. We have 3 questions. I have failed utterly the last few weeks to get to all of the email questions. I've got 3 of them loaded up on the screen for you today as well, which we'll be getting to. But before we get into that, I thought I would start the show with a little monologuing, as I like to do, and go over some things about some stuff I did a bit of a deep dive on this week, just a little bit. Because I thought it went to a good place that I wanted to share with you guys. I know a lot of people don't necessarily see the world or care about the world the same way that I do, and that doesn't make them bad people or worse people than me or any kind of value judgment. I don't really have, I don't try not to think that way about this because that's the right way to do it. But I was doing some research this week into the subject of empathy, and it's a subject that I had some a couple confusions about, but I thought to myself, in watching how people talk about this and watching how I've talked about it, empathy has been something that has been confusing. And I personally had a very, very gross misunderstanding of something that I wanted to clear up or clarify so that I can correct any misimpression or wrong idea that I've given you guys over the years about this human experience that we call empathy. There is a concept out there. You know, people like me take this stuff really seriously, and the meaning of these terms and how we're, you know, what exactly we're talking about I'm probably taking it more seriously than, you know, a lot of people would, right? But when it comes down to the brass tacks of differentiating, you know, fine points of human psychology, then it's important that we take a close, hard look at stuff like this. Because empathy isn't just feeling warm and fuzzy. Empathy isn't just liking somebody. Empathy isn't just having a feeling of warmth about humanity or about your fellow human beings. There are certainly aspects of that or reflections of it in what empathy is. But it's... it gets them all mixed up in values and care and concern and in-group, out-group. And we get some funny ideas about empathy as a result of that. So the 2 things I wanted to clear up, and let me write these down real fast so I forget. First one is empath, an empath. And the second thing I wanted to go over with you real fast, right, was sort of, the dark side of it. So empathy is not a personality type. An empath is not a personality type. To talk about people as empaths, as though there's a special kind of human being who has or is somehow imbued with more care or kindness towards others, is a really wrong way to think about that concept. And it leads to more division in describing people who are non-divisive. It's a little funny, right? There's a model out there that I have discussed on various shows I've done over the years about empaths and apaths and sociopaths. It's this three sort of terminal, or is this three-person, three-type model, right? I say terminal, like Jesus, that's a Scientology term. Which we've discussed on this channel, but I can't remember exactly when or where. I think I've done some shows with John Atack, and he and I have only done like 30 plus shows together. So please forgive me for not knowing exactly where we talked about this, or I might have dropped, some descriptions of this stuff. But there's a model out there, and it's a perfectly valid model. There's nothing wrong with it. What was wrong was my description and discussion about it, where in a hostile, traumatic, emergency, kind of threatening environment situation, studies of predators and predatory behavior proposed a model of empaths, apaths, and sociopaths, where people could be divided up by their behavior in that scenario or situation, right? An emergency, a cult, a known context, right? A known situation that we can describe of abusive, predatory, dangerous, threatening behavior, right? You will find people will behave in one of three different ways. Naturally, organically, they sort of sort themselves, according to this model, into empathic behavior, apathic behavior, or sociopathic behavior. That the model is not trying to describe these people as personalities. It's not trying to say the people who are helpers, who act empathically, who are empaths in this model, that's not describing them in their entire life. It's not just saying that they are a special kind of person who always acts empathically in every situation. It's not saying that this is the percentage of the population who are Mr. Rogers type personalities. And this was something I misunderstood about this model. The way it was described to me and the way that I learned about it was off to that degree. And I've been running around for years thinking about empaths. And I'm sure some of you have too. And that's why I wanted to go out of my way to correct that, because there is no such thing. This model says that there are people who will act as helpers, who will be helpful, who will be empathetic during moments of crisis, stress, trauma, predation, etc. Right? Then there's a whole bunch of people, the majority of people in a situation like that will act apathically. They can be swayed to help, or they can be swayed to become enablers of the predator. They can be destructive in that situation. But this is a situational model. It's saying in that situation, the predators can convince a certain group of people to help enable the predator, to help work for the predator, to make things worse in that situation, even if they don't necessarily realize that's what they're doing. Those are your apaths. And then, of course, your sociopathic person in that model. The sociopath in that model is not a person who has sociopathic, disorder or is narcissistic personality disorder. It's just trying to describe their behavior in that time. They are acting, antisocial. Sociopath is a personality type. Apath and empath are not. And that's the source of where that model can become very confused for people. And they can start thinking about empaths as personality types. And the reason this is important is because I started wondering how many people in the world are naturally empaths versus how many people in the world are naturally sociopaths. And we can ask questions validly about a percentage of sociopaths in the world. We cannot ask the same question about empaths in the world, because the truth is that short of a very, very, very tiny slice of the population who are organically, neurologically, or somehow physically unable to experience the experience of empathy in their minds, short of those small outlier group of people, everybody has the power of empathy. Everybody can empathize with other people or other situations. Empathy is a very, very natural, organic experience for most human beings across the boards. But people get confused about this because they think that if you don't empathize with the same things I empathize with, then there must be something wrong with your ability to empathize overall. And that's not true. That's where we lose the plot, and that's where the division happens. That's where we make an assumption about another person that because they don't have a moral landscape that it compels them to empathize with the same things we do, we see them as uncaring, unempathetic, cold, vicious, mean-spirited, all these words we can throw at them because they don't see the world we see it. They don't map it the same way. But that doesn't mean that they don't have the power to or ability to empathize with other human beings. They just empathize with people maybe we wouldn't feel empathy towards. If you went to a KKK rally, if you're a viewer of mine, you're probably not somebody who's going to be very empathetic with the people in that room. But the people in that room do have valid, real empathy, just like you experience empathy with your cat, your dog, your kids, your family, your connections. Those KKK guys experience that same level of empathy with each other. So they do have the power or ability to empathize. They just don't have the same moral map or landscape that in value set that you do. And so there's a clash of that. Now, a lot of people get that. That's not like some esoteric weird thing to know, but we forget it pretty quick. And I've seen and contributed to myself many, many conversations where there's this idea that those people are somehow lacking in humanity or somehow lacking in some basic fundamental human architecture, that they don't see the world the way I see it. So therefore, they're kind of fucked up. And there's something actually biologically wrong with them. Well, maybe, but realize that when you're saying something or accusing somebody of something like that, you are talking about a very, very, very tiny percent of the population who actually just can't empathize at all. And I wanted to point that out because I think that's really, really important today in our age of divisiveness, right? The other thing I wanted to say about empathy is, make sure, Harvey, you get your questions into the question box so I can throw them up on the screen and answer you, okay? The other thing I wanted to say about empathy is there is a dark side to it. Not all empathy is necessarily appropriate, useful, or helpful in all circumstances, and you can be in a place where you have maybe a little bit too much. And there is this concept of toxic empathy, and I don't want to forward that or push that or come across like I'm trying in any way to give that any validity. So I have to tiptoe around this one a little bit because I'm not saying that empathy is inherently toxic or, there's people who just run around having way too much of it. But you can get confused about this. I sure did for a lot of years. You heard me go on and on and on here on this channel about saving the world and my obsessions and compulsions in that direction, kind of implanted by Scientology, because I didn't think that way before I got into Scientology. I was not a save the world, Greenpeace activist, kind of person before I got involved in Scientology. I was a pretty regular guy who just wanted a regular career path. I wanted to help people and I wanted to have a big effect in the world, but I wasn't at all about saving the world. And Scientology really turned me on to that in a way that became obsessive. And for years after leaving Scientology, I still felt that way. I still felt like I was on the side of right and good and true and a freedom fighter and all that because I wanted to save the world. Well, you guys have heard me go on and on about, how nuts that is as a goal. There is no such thing as saving the world. That's a ridiculous goal. But there were two things I sort of was looking at this week that I wanted to share with you real fast. One, the dark side of empathy is that when, let's say you have an environment, let's say you have a work environment or production environment, switch gears real fast. So let's say you have like a factory or warehouse or something, or an office environment, someplace you're gonna have production happening. You want to get people working together, even if it's not a work environment. It can be whatever organized activity. Is it better to run it with ruthless efficiency and not allow feelings, emotion, humanity into that picture and just run it like a machine operation? Or is it better to run it as a human operation and allow for humanity, caring, compassion, empathy, bring that into the environment? And will people respond and work better under that? Well, before you jump to yes, and think, yes, of course, a more humane environment would be better, you got to stop and think for a second about that there's a dark side to empathy too. You start bringing in human emotions and people getting along and relationships and wanting them to have, to feel good about their work, morale, production's the basis of morale, all that kind of stuff. If you start bringing that kind of stuff in, you're going to bring in all this dark side too, which is, jealousy, antagonism that, towards each other, the inner office, competitiveness and jealousy, relationships and hierarchy of trying to get on, trying to get one over on other people, right? Unfair advantage, stuff like that. All that other stuff comes into the picture when you bring in, the emotional component. So my question, one of the questions I was researching this week is, does bringing all of that into the picture make it less efficient, so that you can get a lot out of people when you motivate them and they're really into the goal or the purpose of what you're doing, and they're willing to put in the extra mile and energetically invest themselves in the work? Do you want that? Because you're going to get all this negative stuff along with that if you bring that in. Is it really going to get you more production? Turns out, since I'm not a production, guy, and I'm not, degreed in this stuff, haven't studied it. Turns out, I learned, there's tons of studies about this, and that kind of environment, the more humane environment, blows away the dominating, whip, motivation, punishment drive kind of environment. It blows it away. If you want creativity, if you want incentivized teammanship, if you want people really working together well, then you've got to offer that better, more humane production environment, right? And I thought that was interesting that it's been proven. It's not just an idea or an opinion. It's been proven worldwide in various business studies and psychological studies around the world. This is a known thing. And I just wanted to say all that because it was interesting to I guess prove that to myself or research that to the degree that I needed to, because I had my doubts. That's all. Oh, because this is where this goes. This is what I want to share with you guys real fast. As far as the whole saving the world thing. So diving down that rabbit hole of research, here's where it ended up. Because I got real frustrated about the fact that sociopaths run our society at the CEO C-suite level. And this is also studied and understood behavior, right? The environment we've created in the business world, in the Western societies, favors and selects for sociopathic behavior. So there's an overrepresentation of sociopaths in the C-suite of corporations around the world. This is a factual statement. It's not my opinion, right? There are more people who are less humane toward other people by design. They were selected for that, right? They rise naturally to that level because they have the skill set and emotional base to be able to rise to those levels of power and influence and income faster and easier than people who are more empathetic. That says something about our systems, but it doesn't actually indicate that people in general are not empathetic or that we are losing the plot or that, and here's the important part, this is where it all goes, or that we are becoming more terrible to each other over time. We are not. Let me just go right to the chase there, right to the conclusion. We are actually, if you read into and look into empathy as a topic and humanity and our collective ability as individual human beings over time to empathize with others, it's a scientific fact. It's a proven thing that if you compare a human being now to a human being from, let's say, 100,000 years ago, if you could pluck one from 100,000 years ago to now, right? The difference, one of the differences you would find, and I found this to be very, very interesting, and you can fact check this yourself and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but what I found and concluded is that we have developed empathy to a degree that we actually naturally are born now into a world where we can empathize and learn empathy in a wider sphere, to a wider degree than any time in all of human history. Today, right now, and I'm not quoting Steven Pinker in this. I know there's controversial work on this, but I'm talking about at the biological, social, human level, right? Pinker gets into that too, but so do other people. There's more on this than just Steven Pinker, right? In case you're wondering where I'm coming up with this stuff. We naturally have the ability to empathize with more human beings in a wider sphere of influence than at any time in history. Right now is the least violent time in all of history. Right now is the least crime-ridden time in all of history. Right now is the time when human beings have the power and ability to empathize with more other human beings than any other time. And that is fucking fascinating to me because I am told the exact opposite every single day on my news feed and on my social media feeds, and I'm sure you are too. And that's why I wanted to get to that good news ending. Okay, so I've gone on and on and on about that. I won't get into all the facts and data trail and all that on it. I just wanted to get to that point that the world's actually, we are better to each other and have more potential and capability of being kinder and compassionate to each other than at any time in all of human history right now. And that's a really, really amazing thing to know, actually, because for me personally, just for you guys who track my recovery, or I've been talking about all my recovery stuff for all these years, I wanted to let you know that for the first time in my entire time since leaving Scientology, that put the lid on that whole save the world thing, right? Doesn't need to be saved. We're doing it. As human beings, we are becoming better. And you don't have to believe me. Go do your own research on it, right? Go figure it out for yourself. But the facts are there to be found. We are becoming better versions of ourselves as a species every generation. And I think we're going to make it as a result of knowing that. I think it really changed my whole view of things, learning that. And that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. It's a big deal for me, and I hope it is. I hope you'll, if this is something that's of interest to you, that you will learn about that too. Because it's a very hopeful message. Turned everything around for me. It really did. On the long term, on the big picture version look of things. It was a big deal for me to get that. Okay, so enough sharing. Maybe everybody else already knew that, and I'm just catching up. But I wanted you guys to know that, right? That you can have some certainty about that. It's not just some opinion or some pie in the sky sort of take on things because I'm a naturally optimistic person. You know, it's fact. And that's cool. That's cool. All right. So. Critical thinking cards real fast because I don't want to deny you your critical thinking education. Let's randomly sort through the cards and come to the placebo effect. It's a bias, the placebo effect. If you believe you're taking medicine, it can sometimes work even if it's fake. The placebo effect can work for stuff that our mind influences, such as pain. I don't know if you know this or not, but pain exists completely in your mind. But not so much for the things like viruses or broken bones. Keep a healthy body in bank balance by using evidence-based medicine from a qualified doctor. Okay, so watch out for that placebo effect out there, folks. It's a real thing. Placebo and nocebo. And if you dive down that rabbit hole, there's a whole other realm of very interesting and exciting things to learn. All right, here we go. Let's get to your questions. This is a question answering show. Here's the first one. I'm just going to go down from the top. Robert Tobias, regarding the recent exit of Marjorie Taylor-Green from the MAGA cult. Do you think the MAGA cult will now fair game her and act the way every other cult deals with a vocal ex-cult member? Oh yeah, it already started. She was getting death threats within a day of complaining about Trump and Trump's efforts. And now she's retiring, right? Because for various reasons. I think she was trying to make a calculated political move to step away from Trump and still move toward maintaining the MAGA base. Because let's remember, MAGA is a populist post-truth political movement that is centered around or has within it a cult of personality around Donald Trump. But MAGA and Trump and the cult of personality that built around Trump are not the exact same Venn diagram. They cross over, but they're not the same exact thing. There are people who are part of MAGA who are not in that cult of personality. And there are people who support Trump all the way to now who are not worshiping at the altar of Trump. They have other reasons for following or supporting him. So MAGA is a pretty big umbrella that has a lot of stuff underneath it. It's got, this religious element. It's got the racists element, right? And those groups of people. There's a lot of groups that fall under that big tent concept of MAGA. Marjorie Taylor-Greene is a political operator who got wrangled into, who jumped on board that MAGA train and got a lot of traction for her career and made a boatload of money, apparently millions and millions of dollars she's walking away from due to insider trading that she took advantage of, because that's Congress's big superpower is insider trading. All Congress people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon in one way or another, unless they have an extraordinary degree of personal ethics and morality, that they don't fall prey to that. It's one of the number one ways to corrupt Congress people is expose them to the joys and wonders of insider trading. And Marjorie Taylor-Greene absolutely took full advantage of that. She's not a good person, and I don't in any way, shape, or form think of her as somebody who is at all on the same moral landscape I'm on, or most of you are on. She's very self-serving. And she thought that she was, my interpretation of what she's doing is that she was trying to separate herself from Trump, because right now Donald Trump is becoming radioactively toxic. I mean, he's always been an incredibly toxic human being. But now, finally, right, Teflon Don is starting to become a thing of the past, where things don't just, bounce off of him or slide off of him. And she could see that, and she was reading the tea leaves and trying to make a move away from that, while still, kind of holding on to some degree of a MAGA base. And they weren't going to let her do that. It's too soon. And, this thing is starting to crumble and fall apart, right? This whole MAGA thing is really dissolving. But it's in its early stages still. So, the writing's on the wall. And she tried to make her move, and MAGA being what it is, and there being a very, very real cult of personality in the middle of this. It's a cult. And when people are in a cult, they're not thinking. They're feeling and they're reacting. Almost 99.9% of what a person is doing in a cult is not rational behavior. It's emotion-based or really fucked up morals-based behavior, right? That's driving them. And they engage in the use of a lot of mental tricks and thought-stopping cliches in order to navigate that, right? So one of the most powerful thought-stopping cliches in a cult of any kind is, if you're not with us, you're against us. This is a universally adopted thought-stopping cliche in every single cult anywhere. There is some degree of, if you're not with us, you're against us. It's black and white. And within the world of MAGA, this is a powerful thought-stopping cliche that they use every day. And it's used very effectively to keep people in the cult, and it's used to drum up that us versus them, right? So Marjorie Taylor-Greene broke, the primary rule, right? If you're not with us, you're against us. And so she started receiving immediately death threats and, and career ruining, best wishes from the fan base and all of that, right? They turned on her real fast. So that's kind of what happened to her. And now she is resigning, right? We'll see where she goes. She's got, endless degrees, years and years ahead of her of CNN appearances and media appearances and speeches and various public speaking things she can do. If she doesn't want to write some books, if she doesn't want to go and she's not necessarily, I don't recall if she said specifically in the wording of her statement that she was leaving politics forever. I mean, maybe she wants to go be a governor or, go some other, elected official route rather than continuing in the House. So however she moves forward, she's going to be just fine. Marjorie Taylor-Greene ain't going anywhere, and she's not, going to just disappear from public life, I don't think. I think she's too addicted to it. But yeah, she's definitely getting fair gamed. No question about it. Right from the get-go, that was happening. MAGA is really good at that. All cults are. I mean, Scientology gives it a label, but you understand everybody does that, right? As far as the cults go. Okay, Vernon. Chris, did you know that Aaron Smith-Levin's in jail until his trial starts? Yeah, I did. I know all about that situation with Aaron Smith-Levin being in jail. And I figured somebody was going to ask me about it at some point. So obviously, I'm going to sit here and tell you guys that that makes me quite happy. You know, Aaron, 2 years ago, Aaron went out of his way to ruin my life and ruin my channel. Aaron did more destructive things to me through his casual hatred of me and my work. He did more to hurt me, my reputation, credibility, and my life economically, financially, than Scientology has ever even approached. No cult in all the 12 years that I've been fighting cults, starting with Scientology, then going to, you know, Christian cults, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Moonies, radical honesty, 2x2s, right? Like all the cults that we've talked about and exposed here, all the multi-level marketing schemes, all the individual cults, the martial arts dojos, all the interviews I've done over all the years exposing very, very abusive personalities, and not one of those people or groups has ever come after me. The only person who ever really did is Aaron fucking Smith-Levin. And now he's in jail. And, you know, that's just too bad. So that's pretty much all I really want to say about that right now. You know, too bad for him, but he deserves every single bit of what's happening to him because he went out of his way to cause it. And what he's doing isn't effective protesting, and it's not helping anybody. It's just making a hash out of Clearwater, and it is not helping us and Scientology, and it's not helping anybody get out of Scientology. So that's my hot take on all of that, and I don't have anything more to say publicly about it. So thanks for asking. All right, Angry Choad. Would you go to a casino to see a concert? Oh, a Choad medley. All right, here we go. And I know, no, Choad, I do not believe that you are using AI to come up with these questions. Somebody was saying that last week. Well, so would I go to a casino to see a concert? Do you keep up with anyone you know in Scientology? Have you read the Science of Survival book? And if so, was it kooky? Okay. I would not go to a casino to see a concert. I've never done that. Not that I wouldn't on principle. I've just never had the opportunity or urged or need to. Yeah. Do you keep up with anyone you knew in Scientology? Yeah. Let's see. One that I knew. I don't think most of the people that I know now were people that I knew in. I've lost contact with most of the people that I was in with. There's a couple people I've spoken to. I've even spoken to the kids of some people I was in Scientology with. The kids are out, and they contacted me, you know, but not the parents, right? They're still in. Yeah, So no, I don't think I know any. I don't think any of the people I'm in touch with now are people that I knew when I was in. There's somebody in the Aftermath Foundation I know who I knew casually when we were in the Sea Org together. Catherine, right? We crossed paths a few times. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yes, I read the Science of Survival book. I read it a few times, and yes, it was very kooky. It was a very, very hard book to read. Before all the revisions, it was hard to read because of all the run-on sentences. And Miscavige was right. There were fucking hundreds of semicolons in that book that did not belong there. It was a very, very poorly edited book. After the 2007, 6 or 7 revisions, whatever the year was that the basics happened, it was a lot easier to read. Didn't particularly improve the quality of the material, though. All right. So there you go with a Choad medley. Before we continue on, let us skip over to our question screen and load up our first of 3 questions from the email line. Thomas Miletick asks, I hear a lot that people have found that the early courses in Scientology, like the communication course, can be really beneficial. And those gains are what really hooks people in before they get to the nonsense that is getting up the bridge to nowhere. I was wondering if there are any Scientology courses or ideas that you still find useful now, despite everything you've experienced. I find a lot of things in Scientology useful, and I find that a lot of those useful pieces are echoed or sourced from other locations. Since leaving Scientology 12 years ago, I've learned a great deal about where L. Ron Hubbard came up with his ideas. And I don't pretend to know, oh, this idea comes from this place. It's not necessarily that easy to, map out cause effect, right? Especially in L. Ron Hubbard's mind, because that guy thought in some pretty fucked up ways, right? So it's a little hard to get in his head. But it's pretty obvious where some of the stuff comes from, and it's not so obvious where other parts come from. John Atack, for example, says that the initial concepts of the tone scale and the emotional layout in Scientology comes out of the concept of the four humors, bile, blood, these four substances that supposedly would leak out of us and would cause us to, have various conditions and stuff. This used to be old settled science, hundreds of years ago, that, this idea of the four humors. And John relates that concept to the tone scale. I don't know that that's the source point for it, but it's as good an idea as any other. So some of it is very conjectural, and some of it is more we know where Hubbard got it from because he admitted to it later or talked about those sources and having read them and stuff like that. And we try to put all that together. And I say all that because it's important to understand something with this question that I've not particularly said before, I don't think, in approaching this question. I've been asked this many, many times over the years. So today, my variation on this answer is that ideas are a dime a dozen, and they progress through time from person to person to person, right? This whole concept of the meme, the idea that replicates itself over time and is spread around through people's minds, right? Ideas are bulletproof. They don't die. They just move and change and morph from person to person to person over time, right? If everybody, if this one idea is contained in the minds only of 50 people and all 50 of them die, good, the idea is dead. But then somebody else can just think it up again. It's really, really hard. It's so hard to kill an idea. And this is important because when it relates to a question like this, it's really important to understand that L. Ron Hubbard didn't come up with one original thing. Not one. Not one. There's nothing in all of Dianetics and Scientology that wasn't thought of before. There isn't any behavior in Scientology that is new and different and unique to Scientology. Right? You can combine certain elements in a new way, like creating an auditing process. But everything that's there was taken from earlier ideas, rituals, psychology, Freud, Blavatsky, Crowley. Right? You take this mix, you throw it in a bag, you shake it up, you get auditing, So so I get this question often because people are trying in a post, one of the ways that this question comes up a lot, and the reason why I'm answering it this way today is because I was having a talk even this week with somebody I was consulting with about this, right? People will come out of Scientology, and it's funny how they will often go to great pains to communicate to me when I'm working with them. Now, I'm still, I was thinking and I was spotting this guy's tone level I'm still using the study tech, and they have this kind of like apologetic or semi-apologetic tone to what they're saying, right? Like, I'm still clearing misunderstood words. Like there's something wrong with opening up a dictionary and looking up words you don't understand, you know? Like it's okay. I'm trying to go here, right? It's okay that you continue using this stuff when you leave. I encourage people to dump the language, because eventually you will move on from this stuff, right? And recognize that the stuff that works in Scientology was never L. Ron Hubbard's to begin with. And it's perfectly okay that you keep using it, right? Now, that's not what this question was asking me, but it made me think of that whole thing. So I wanted to say all that. There are a lot of things in Scientology that people use that they find useful despite everything they've experienced. I don't any longer do anything in my life and connect it to Scientology anymore. If I go into my living room and pull open my dictionary and look up a word because I don't know what it means, or I look it up online, more often I'll just do that, I don't think anymore. There's no immediate connection in my mind to word clearing. I'm just looking up a word. So is study tech valid because I'm doing that? No. I'm just looking up a word. Or I'm just taking a walk because I want to get some space. I want novelty. I want my attention to experience something new. So I'll go take a walk. Am I doing Scientology? Am I finding something useful in Scientology when I go do that? No, I'm just going to take a walk. I don't connect that anymore to the Scientology version of taking a walk. And neither do you. You don't have to do that. You can separate those things. And that's what I do now. So I don't think about them that way, right? But it took a long time to get there, you know, shedding those habits and making it okay with yourself. I think I went on that whole roll because I think one of the reasons why people get hung up on this in a post-cult recovery sense is they're trying to create new walls mentally around themselves to keep out the cult. And maybe I'm suggesting instead of doing that, you recognize that the cult experience isn't something you have to wall off and try to forget or keep separate from yourself, or treat it as though those memories or those experiences are toxic radiation in your mind, because they're not. They're just memories. And you have habits from those experiences that you can break. You can break the habits, but you don't have to treat the memories or the ideas as though they're radioactive. You can just move on from them and accept or think about them in a different way so that they're not, you know, they're not that anymore. Now, having said all that, if somebody were to say to me, oh, well, what about auditing? No, fuck auditing. I'm not talking about that. I don't mean taking something really, truly destructive and mind-controlling or mind-altering and continue using that. Don't do that. Don't reframe that, right? Don't take a false piece of information like the tone scale and just not think about it as the tone scale, right? No, I mean, the tone scale is its own thing, and it's horrible, and there's nothing true about it, right? So there are some things you absolutely want to let go of, but what I'm trying to suggest is don't be afraid of these things or treat them as though they're going to harm you if you think about them. They're just, you know, they're just harmless lies. They're nonsense. The harm came from the emotional investment we gave them and the certainty that we invested in them. That's what you want to get rid of, right? That's what you want to lose. I went on a whole different tangent, I know, than where this question was really asking, but I hope I kind of answered it in a roundabout sort of way, I guess. I just wanted to say all that today when I saw that question come up in my queue. So So there we go. I should have brought some water or something. My throat, I am really dry mouthed right now. I'm gonna do something I don't normally do real fast. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. I'm gonna be right back. And we're back. Thank you for your patience. Like I said, I don't normally do that kind of thing, but I didn't bring anything to drink today, and I'm a dork. All right, much better. Thank you for sticking with me there. All right, let's get to your questions. All right. Matt, questions in the question box, please. You guys are asking me some good questions in the regular comments there. Go ahead and put them in the comment box or in the question box so I can answer them. Okay, Vernon asks, how is Mike Rinder's family doing? Does Christy volunteer for the Aftermath Foundation? If Christy donate or volunteers for the Aftermath, she's doing so in an area that I am not working in. I don't connect or work with Christy on that. She might. And as far as I know, the family's doing fine, but I'm not in regular touch with them, so I'm not able to answer questions about them that way. Xian, I liked your podcast you posted yesterday with John Atack about the Scientology Code of Honor. Great, thank you. But could you talk about how it relates to the oath of office our government officials take? Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, okay, sure. Just in terms of codes and stuff, absolutely. There's a funny thing that happens over time, isn't there? This is where my mind goes right away. I don't know if this is what you were looking for, but I immediately start thinking about the fact that in times of rising anxiety and stress, you know what we lose? We lose the concept of integrity and honor because things get more desperate, right? As our needs go down the Maslow's hierarchy, as you go down the scale to basic needs, physical needs at the bottom, right? When people are hungry and tired mostly, and it's physical needs that need to be met, you will find very, very, very little attention spared or even able to be spared for things like higher level concepts, consciousness, morality, compassion, care. These things completely disappear from the picture when physical needs are rising in desperation or need, right? As people have less money, less time, less access to resources, they become more and more desperate. And it seems to me that over time, this has been a thing that has been happening with us society-wide. Probably hardly an original or even insightful observation, really. I think a lot of people have noted this, but it's worth saying out loud because it's been interesting for me over my lifetime to watch things like adultery become completely acceptable, completely not an issue at all. society-wide in terms of judgment. People won't pass judgment or give any moral valuation on the sanctity of marriage. Marriage is a joke for a lot of people now. Lots and lots of people think it's a completely useless, has nothing to do with anything kind of institution, because the value of one's word, of saying you're going to do a thing and then sticking to it, has become less and less important. I think that's a true thing. I think in terms of how it's talked about or discussed in the public forum is that way. And this relates to oaths of public office, right? If marriage vows are, if even the word, the concept of sacred, or the concept of, immutable, or integral, right? Integrity. If these concepts are a joke to people, and for a lot of people they are, a lot of people these days think of these things as just utter jokes, right? It comes out of a place of distrust, which we can get to in a second. But the breakdown of sanctity, of promise, of keeping one's word, right? The breakdown of that is a huge, huge, huge red flag in the breakdown of social structures and systems, because it's an indication that people don't trust one another. And oaths of office that are violated by politicians are one of the first biggest red flags you can see as to whether a society is actually taking itself and its rituals and structures seriously or not, right? And since Nixon's been around, we've been considering politicians and their oaths of office a bit of a joke. And that's just within my lifetime. I'm pretty sure this is a cyclic thing. I think this has been experienced before by earlier generations, but I can only speak to my time and my observations when it comes to politics. And these guys are failing left, right, and center at this, right? Where public office becomes a place to go enrich yourself rather than actually serve the public, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's kind of how those are the connections I start making right away in my mind when you ask me about oaths of office for politics or political office and Scientology's code of honor, right? I don't look at oaths of office. I mean, alternately, maybe another way of looking at this might be oaths of office. Is there something about those kind of codes or promises or something that is, somehow mind controlling or thought reforming or something? But I don't think that's a valid argument or angle to take on that. I don't really see there's much to talk about there. People should be following their oaths of office. That's not a trap. Hubbard wrote a mental trap, right? A moral trap for people with the code of honor. And he knew exactly what he was doing, because there's no more powerful way to get people than to get them on their commitments and on their responsibilities and obligations, right? Because it's social pressures. And that comes from outside the person. So they feel this external pressure on them to follow those things, right? Unless you're a sociopath or an antisocial personality, which is then it's easy to not follow any of those rules or just give them lip service, right? Oh, yeah, give me a Bible. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll say whatever you want me to say. It's easier for a sociopath to do that. And as more and more sociopaths have risen to power, and non-sociopathic people like you and me have watched them treat their oaths of office and treat their rules and responsibilities like toilet paper, we just kind of, collectively go, oh my God, this is horrible, and lose trust and lose faith in our institutions. And over and over and over and over and over again, that has happened to us. And we've just kind of let it happen. And it continues to happen until we get to where we're at now, where, I don't know how you all see it. Or think about this, but when I see somebody, swearing on a Bible or something, in terms of politicians, I just laugh, right? It's you should be, burning, right? You should just what's the term? Spontaneous combustion. That's it. Right? You should just spontaneously combust from all the lies you're saying right now, swearing on a Bible that you're gonna do all these things, and you're as a public officer that you're not gonna do at all. This guy should just explode. But anyway, Let's move on. Xen, does Trump practice a policy of fair game for his opponents? Yes, of course he does. All predators do. It's as predatory behavior as Darvo is. Fair game is a universal concept, and it doesn't just happen with predators either. It's actually a group response to perceived disloyalty or betrayal. The urge to get back at members who leave is a universal human thing. Every group everywhere experiences some degree of disappointment and urge to shame and feeling of betrayal or disloyalty when people leave or break off. You'd have to be an extraordinary group to truly be, completely not affected or not have any investment at all in a group setting, in members coming or going, right? People leaving, no big deal, right? No, it's always kind of a big deal when people come and go, but to the degree that the group is, you could say there, to the degree the group is being run toxically or exclusively or with intent and purpose and drive, right? The more of that there is, the more importance there is on the group, the more we're going to see this kind of activity of fair gaming. I mean, obviously when you're an employer employing people and somebody leaves your employment, you don't go fair game them, right? So not all groups, I guess. I'm even there. I'm being a bit over generalizing, but but even then, right? You'll still have people who, even in workplace environments, when you have toxic people involved, there that urge to, because the group feels like, as a group, because the group feels like something was done to them when a member leaves, just structurally, right? Comes in, I'm going to be part of this, yay, yay, rah, rah, kumbaya. I don't like this anymore. I think I'm going to leave. What? Everybody else is still on board, but you're violating the terms and conditions, man. What are you doing? Where are you going, right? And if it's all amicable and all good and it's no big deal, what's the problem, right? But if it's an emotionally invested, this is purpose driven, we're on a moral crusade, there's a righteousness to it. If any of that is leaking in, then fair game is absolutely going to happen, because by that person leaving, the people who remain feel like that guy or woman who's leaving is doing something to them. They're hurting them. They're hurting the organization. They're committing an overt. And that compels reciprocity within us as an emotional need, right? Justice, right? We got to get back at that person. How dare they? So if you're in a group thinking you're saving the world and some guy leaves, well, clearly he not only isn't saving the world anymore, he's part of the group that's making the world worse. So he needs to get some retribution for that, right? And that out comes this reciprocity, justice impulse. And that's, as far as I see it, that's what's going on in at the deep level of where fair game comes from. And to the degree that you have toxic people running a group who develop and nurture those feelings of injustice and reciprocity. Yeah, we need to go get that guy. He needs to be taught a lesson. He can't just get away with this. He can't just do that to us. How dare he? How dare he? What a suppressive person that guy is. We're going to go show him, right? You start riling people up around that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? And away we go. And L. Ron Hubbard baked that kind of thing into policy, right? So did the Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as that goes, right? Tough love, all that. We have to shun them in such a finalistic, harsh way that it wakes them up from their demonic dream, right? And they come back to us, repentant and and coming back into the fold, right? Good stuff. Okay. Xen. Thanks for asking me all these questions, guys. I hope my answers are useful to you guys. Xion, doesn't a human at a certain age develop a sense that other people are their own person with their own feelings and thoughts? Yes. Do you think some never get that? Yes, what you're referring to is called theory of mind. And it's between the ages of 3 to 5 years old, a human being will experience a sudden realization. This is part of developmental stages, and it's a very, very important part of every single human being's existence. Every one of us has to have a moment or a gradual series of moments. I'm really not sure how it happens because it happens to us at such a young age. But it is a very specific and a very real thing that happens. You're not born with this, and it has to happen, that you realize at a certain point in your life that other minds exist. As a baby and as a young human being, you are born into a world where your only knowledge and understanding of the world is through your lens. Completely and 100%. The entire world is what you experience and only what you experience. And when you have that point of view, every other thing in the universe exists for you. And it only exists for you. And at some point, you realize, wait a minute. And it's usually your parents. And they don't have to explain this to you. This isn't something that somebody sits down and teaches you. It's a life experience. Your brain, your body, your awareness. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. She's doing things. He's doing things. They're saying or doing things right now that aren't what I want them to be saying or thinking or doing, and they're doing it anyway. And they keep doing it. Wait a minute. I want them to do, but they, what, wait, what, hang on, wait, are they, is that person actually like me, like a person? Wait a minute, they have their own, they think, oh my God, like it's this whole realization. It's called theory of mind. And when you have it, you can't, obviously it's one of those things that a human being experiences. And once they see it, you never unsee it, right? You suddenly realize everybody is their own person. And they're not just extensions of you. And a solipsist or a narcissist has a real problem with that. And my own personal thinking, I've never read this. I don't think it's scientifically a thing. Maybe if I deep dive down it, I'll find out I'm totally wrong about this. But I often wonder about the fact that I think that narcissists or that condition is a condition where that moment, that theory of mind moment, was somehow impaired, or they somehow didn't quite get it. Now, the funny thing about theory of mind is it doesn't necessarily imply or result in compassion or empathy. It could result in different forms of empathy. Remember, we didn't talk about this today particularly. I didn't go down into this, but empathy is not just an emotional experience. Empathy is a socio-psychological phenomenon. It's not just warm and fuzzies you feel inside of you, right? So you can have theory of mind where you realize other minds exist independent of yours with their own knowledge base, their own experience base, their own emotional base, and their own perspective on things. You pick that up, you realize that, it's this big moment, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean or imply that you're going to feel compassion or tolerance or understanding towards those other minds. That's an additional thing. So it doesn't. So technically speaking, I'm sort of refuting myself here, because it wouldn't necessarily follow that that a narcissist wouldn't experience, theory of mind. But one wonders. One wonders with somebody like a Trump, right? Somebody like really far down the spectrum. I mean, did they ever realize that we're not all just NPCs in their game universe, right? I don't know. It's an interesting way of thinking about it, at least. Maybe it's disprovable and maybe it's not right, but it's something I wonder about, right? The relationship between theory of mind and narcissistic behavior. But those two things don't have to be related necessarily. It's just something I wonder about. Okay. I'd be curious. It's funny how I never really have dived into the research on people who don't experience theory of mind. What happens? I think it's such a small outlier that I don't know that it's well studied, but I'll have to dive into that at some point. Okay, let us jump to the other, while I'm thinking about this, let's go over to the other screen and throw up question number 2 from the email line. These questions come at me from email, so if you want to email me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. If you send me an email at that address, askchrisshelton@gmail.com, I will put your questions in my question queue and get them up just like this. And eventually we will get to answering them. So send them to me. All right. Matt Bywater asks, in a recent discussion with Alex O'Connor, podcaster Andrew Gold described a cultish, magical thinking style element to the transgender debate. Specifically, that trans women are women is a thought-terminating cliche akin to 2 + 2 = 5, as in George Orwell's vision of authoritarianism. Is this an accurate application of the cultic phenomenon of thought-stopping cliches? More generally, what could be the effect of applying descriptions of real cultic phenomena to culture war issues such as this? Well, generally speaking, I am hesitant to get into this because people will misuse cult language and phenomena all the time in order to back up their logically fallacious arguments, right? This happens all the time, right? You're a cult member. No, you're a cult member. No, you're the one who's got thought-stopping cliches. No, you're the one who's got that. You can just go back and forth with this crap all day. You're in a cult. No, you're in a cult. Nah, you never left the cult, right? Blah, 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 blah. Accusations. And this devolves into that very, very quickly among people who are not serious about these terms or terminology. And Andrew Gold is very much falls into that category. Now, I'm not going to go on some big ad hominem fest here against Andrew Gold. I'm just trying to point out that Andrew Gold is not a serious person and he doesn't engage with these terms in a serious way. So this is an example, him using this on his alt-right channel where he has managed to wrangle in millions of views at a time, saying crap like this is not helpful, right? Andrew Gold is not helping anybody or anything with the way he talks about this stuff, because there's more nuance to it than Andrew Gold is capable of bringing to his channel. Andrew Gold is not running a nuanced channel where levels of understanding are brought to these hot topic culture war issues. He's running a very black and white kind of operation. So I have to say all that right out of the gate so that you understand that when I try to now go and talk about this with a more nuanced approach, I'm not backing up Andrew Gold. Andrew Gold can go fuck himself, right? I don't agree with anything that man is doing or saying. So I gotta be that strong about this so that y'all are clear that nothing he's doing or saying is supported by what I'm saying right now. Make that really clear. Okay. Thought-stopping cliches are entirely dependent on context. So yes, there are thought-stopping cliches that are in use within the trans community. Just like, and hear me on this, just like thought-stopping cliches are in use in every human community everywhere. We all do it. And if you think thought-stopping cliches or thought-terminating phrases are only something that happens in cults, no, they happen everywhere. Every single thing that happens in cults happens outside of cults. The reason cults are cults, and that we talk about them the way we do, is because of the concentration of bad behavior that happens within those groups. But all the same behaviors happen everywhere. And if you're not okay with that, or if you kind of think in more black and white ways, then I have to introduce you to this concept of nuance and the fact that we all do this crap. Cults just dial it up to 11, right? They take all this crap we do and they really go all in on it. So thought-terminating cliches are a dime a dozen, and a thought-terminating cliche is not necessarily obvious just from the words. It's how you use them and in what way you use them. That's what I mean about context. So we come up with, and I just made a couple notes on this one because I know this is hot topic, important stuff for people, right? There are situations where all trans women are women can be used as a thought-stopping cliche to shut down conversation. Happens all the time. Because if you believe that it's always a thought-stopping cliche and no one is ever saying that without it being that way, well, no, there's nuance in this conversation, right? There are reasons to talk about males transitioning to females and referring to them as women. There are valid reasons to do that and have that conversation. Okay, so it's not always a thought-stopping cliche, but it's not never a thought-stopping cliche too, right? In other words, sometimes people use this phrase, all trans women are women. Sometimes people use that to shut down conversation because they assume that anybody who says it is a bad actor. Well, you're just homophobic, and so I'm going to use this to shut down your homophobia. Fine. If somebody's homophobic, you don't necessarily want to engage with their homophobia or transphobia, right? Fine. Shut it down. But realizing that you're shutting it down, right, by using a thought-terminating, we're going to stop thinking about this now, right? Shut it down. I don't want to hear your transphobic, homophobic bullshit, right? Fine. Go for it. But what if you're making an assumption that somebody's coming after you with transphobic or homophobic language or attitude, and they're not? What if they really do have a question? What if they really don't get it? What if they were raised in such a way that they want to understand, but they really have a hard time getting their head around it? They don't understand certain biological principles. They don't understand certain psychological principles. They got religion on the brain, and they're stuck in this kind of, they're kind of stuck in some other thought-stopping cliches that are locking up their thinking, coming out of their religion or coming out of their 9th grade science class because they didn't really understand chromosomes, or they really didn't understand the process of reproduction, or they really didn't understand. And you guys know, watching this right now, how few of us came out of high school really understanding everything we were taught. And so you got people running around in this society who are faced with trans issues, and they are confused. They're not hateful. They're not angry. They're not viciously trying to end the trans movement, but they don't get it. And sometimes, in an effort to ask questions and get it, try to get it, they'll throw questions out and they'll get this back. Yeah, all trans women are women. Stop asking questions. Just stop asking questions. If that's not a thought-stopping cliche, I don't know what is, right? And that happens all the time. I've seen it. I've been on all ends of it. Right? Not that I'm trans, but I mean in terms of how the thought-stopping cliches get thrown around. So any phrase, any set of words can be used as a thought-stopping cliche in certain circumstances. And when you're using all trans women are women to shut down conversation, shut down questioning, shut down curiosity, then that's what you're doing. And you can pretend you're doing something else, or you can use a lot of reasoning to rationalize why you need to shut these people down, probably coming out of your own assumptions about their character, as I mentioned earlier, right? If you're right and you're facing a hater, okay, don't engage, right? But realize that you're not always facing a hater, and some people's, you know, for, again, lack of a better term, right? Some people's trauma drama comes in and blows it all up, and it's all very dramatic, and it didn't have to be, because it wasn't about hate, and that wasn't part of the picture. But people can assume that after they get attacked a lot, they start thinking everybody's an enemy, right? That kind of thing. Again, everybody, every group, every human being, anywhere. I'm not in any way, shape, or form right now targeting or specifying that there's some, you know, extra amount of any of this in the trans community, right? They're just human beings like everybody else. And they all suffer from the same biological, psychological, you know, foibles and problems that we all have. And this is one of them, right? That we use language to shut other people down. We use it all the time that way. And there is nobody in the trans community who is at all immune to that. We all do it, right? So that's what I wanted to say about all that. And I hope I'm clear. I really, really, really hope I'm clear. I think we've moved past a lot of that cancel culture crap at this point, but I really, really hope I'm clear about the fact that that nothing I said here in this answer is in support of what Andrew Gold is doing, right? Because that's whatever, right? Yeah, a broken clock can get it right twice a day, right? And that's where that guy lives. So there's my take on that. All right, let's go back to the chat here. Okay. See what else we got coming in on the question line. Yeah, exactly, Lutz. I mean, I had Andrew Gold on my show. I know Andrew Gold, right? I interacted with him when he made decisions to start doing what he's doing now. He did it on purpose. And what he's doing now is alt-right stuff, and I don't support that, right? So I had a real severe, you know, break point with Andrew Gold, and told him, right, that I didn't agree with what he was doing. And he was like, well, gotta feed the kids, right? And it's like, if you have to feed your kids by being an asshole, then I think you got to think about your life again, because you're not doing it right. Okay. Carry on here. Okay, Harvey Netton. Hi, Chris. Hey, I'm glad you got your question in the box here. You've said in the past you're ADHD. Yep. How do you manage it in the Sea Org? I presume you had no idea that you had it back then. I have it too, and imagine the SO would be a nightmare. Oh my God, was it a nightmare, Harvey? Thank you for asking about this. Talked about this a little bit, but I've never really gone all in on it. So let's talk about this, because I did not know I had ADHD. And when you don't know you have a condition, you will use the knowledge you have to try to explain what's going on, right? You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know about ADHD, or you don't think that's something that applies to you, then you're going to start wondering, well, what the hell is going on that I can't focus, can't keep my attention on things, feel restless and anxious and nervous for no reason at all if I'm stuck doing something for too long, the same thing. I need novelty, right? I need to change up stuff every now and again, every few hours, right? It's very hard to stay seated and focused on a thing for hours at a time unless I hit one of those flow hyper-focus moments, in which case it becomes super, super easy, and 12 hours can go by and I'm not aware of anything except the work I'm doing, right? Like, it's kind of this extreme of one or the other. And and how do you explain that if you don't have terminology like ADHD? You explain it as laziness, overts and withholds, right? You miss withholds. You explain you're trying to blow. You have misunderstood words. You're low toned. You're not dedicated, which means you got more overts, right? It always seems to come back to these, sort of things that are wrong with you that, that are of a moral, problem. You have some moral issue, right? You're out ethics to some degree, or you're dramatizing your case. Stop putting your case on post, right? You'll hear that kind of crap a lot. I sure did. And I internalized all of it and started feeding it to myself, in those old, in those negative feedback loops that I would run in my head. So I managed it very, very poorly when I was in the Sea Org because I had no idea what was going on. I would literally, you'd get up and walk out and go take a walk around the block or, stuff like that 5 times a day. You start smoking, you get restless. You start, you have like 5, 6, 7 different things going at a time, and you're bouncing from one to the next because you can't just focus and get any one done. Even if you kind of hate yourself for not being able to just focus and get stuff done, you can't help it. Just so many labels running around and around and around and around and around in my head all those years. I mean, especially when I was in management where I was stuck at a desk job and it was 9 in the morning until like, midnight, 1 a.m. most days, right? So it was torturous. It was really felt like torture some days to sit and do the work. And I just didn't have words for it, to understand what that was. It just was like this tight, and you're really uncomfortable in your own skin after a while, Yeah. So that's kind of how I managed it, was really not managing it very well. It was rough. It was really rough. And so many things made so much more sense after I got the diagnosis and started learning about it, like so much. My whole life really clarified in so many ways. All right, let's carry on here. Xen, would you rather have more laws and less privacy in exchange for more security and safety, or the other way around, freedom? Well, I personally am a person who is about, less security and safety. This question, Xen, is the key question that differentiates one government culture type from another. Where do we draw the line in the sand as to how much safety or security do you want versus freedom of thought and action? We all draw the line somewhere. There's nobody who believes in total extremism of one way or the other, right? 1984, nobody really likes very much, and that's the extreme side of having more laws and less privacy in exchange for security. You will never be safer than in an authoritarian society or environment, theoretically speaking, right? It's just the safest possible place to be because everybody's marching in lockstep, right? And if human beings weren't involved in that, it would be a perfect society, and that would be the perfect way we would organize, is around totally safe, totally secure, and no privacy, right? Okay. I'm very quickly going to talk myself into a philosophical rabbit hole here. So let me try to keep this from going into this like horribly circular generalized place. I personally believe in a lot of personal liberties and a lot of and the concept of human rights and letting people, get on with it in an environment of freedom and freedom of belief and freedom of action, right? I very much want that for people, but I am hyper aware of, maybe more so than some people, of the limitations of that, right? That total freedom and liberty, right, can be their own trap, because if you don't organize around certain principles and for safety and security of the group, then individuals will fall into too much freedom and we won't really be very efficient in how we're dealing with our survival or our environment, and then we kill, because it gets violent. I mean, people get too conflicted and stuff like that. So you have to have some safety and security. So how much? Don't know that we've got that totally figured out yet in a practical way. But I would rather have more safety. I would rather have more freedom than, my line in the sand is more freedom, more, choices for people than locking people into a, intensely secure and safe environment. But you don't get to have any freedom in that environment, right? I don't like that. I don't think people like that in general, basically. But ultimately, there isn't. See, here's the thing about this question, I guess, where I'm not going to talk myself into a rabbit hole in here, but I do want to point out that that there isn't actually a right answer to this question. This question is one of those tests of character. It doesn't have a right or a wrong answer. There is no such thing as too much security and safety, and there's no such thing as too much freedom, right? So it's all subjective. It's all a matter of personal experience and personal preference. You're going to find a surprisingly wide spectrum of belief on this one. You really would be surprised at where people go with this one once you break it down. Okay, John O'Nolan, can you describe what the big blue building looks like inside? It looks very, what's the word? Hospital-like. It looks very, well, because it's an old hospital. So when you walk down hospital corridors, that's kind of what it's like walking around inside Big Blue. Especially in the big main building, the one that has the Scientology sign on it, because they haven't really done much in the way of renovations of the inside of that building. So it's still got its original hospital floors and walls and shit like that with the rounded. It's got at the place where the wall and the floor meet, it's rounded. It's not a 90-degree angle, right? Because that's how you can more easily clean up liquids that have spilled all over the mosaic tile floor, right? Or the plain white, tile floor. And that's what most of the hallways are like in the main building, and a lot of the floors in the rooms are still that, with those rounded corners. And that kind of tells you a little bit, right? I'm trying to find one characteristic that might communicate to you what it's like in that building. It's like that. ASHO, LA Org, AOLA, they've all been fully revamped inside. They don't have that old hospital look anymore. They got a lot of wood and stuff like that. I think ASHO got redone again, and I'm not as familiar with it as I used to be. The wood paneling and everything they've got inside the service orgs is really quite beautiful. I mean, it's really, really quite nice work. I believe even now, right? I mean, it's nice. But it's cold. It's a cold place. Even temperature-wise, I mean, it's a little cold. Yeah, kind of like that. All right, Matt. Hey, Matt, can Marjorie Taylor-Greene fallout with Trump be explained solely by the morality part of her MAGA belief? Committed to fighting sex trafficking, Trump's dealings with Epstein were the tipping point. No, I do not believe that Marjorie Taylor-Greene's separation from Trump was motivated specifically by her own personal moral dilemma of Trump being a pedophile and her having to deal with that, right? And her having some come to Jesus moment or something about that. I don't think that's what was behind Marjorie Taylor-Greene's calculus at all in turning against Trump. I think it was a purely political move based on which way the wind's blowing, right? That's kind of how I think she made her decisions on that. There are a lot of people who are experiencing moral conflict right now because of Donald Trump and the Epstein files. And a lot of the noise that you're hearing out of the MAGA world right now is the cognitive dissonance of resolving that noise that they are experiencing, the dilemma that they're experiencing, having to rationalize their way through that. And it's hard in the face of something like the Epstein files and, over 20 victims constantly out there saying the motherfucker raped us. Why don't you people believe us, right? Like, how many women have to come forward with detailed, explicit stories? How many people have to go to court, like, you know, Jean Carroll did, over and over again to prove that these fucking people are sexual deviants and criminals before this lot of cultists will believe them? Well, a lot, right? Because cultists don't engage with facts. But even they have moral landscape, right? They do have concepts of good and bad and right and wrong and how the world's supposed to look. And it can only, that is deeper than their emotional needs. And so it's harder to get down to. But when you get that moment of moral conflict blow up, where the person finally gets, they push it off and nope, this moral conflict will resolve where my guy is gonna be the good guy. This is gonna work out, right? They're driven by this. It has to be that my good guy is the good guy, and they just. It's so hard for them to get it that no, he's the bad guy, right? Just like it was so hard for me to get. It was a 10-year process. Let's compare this. Let's take it out of MAGA for a second, right? So we can, because it's so morally disgusting to us that people can support somebody who so obviously is a sex trafficker as Donald Trump, that it's hard to have the conversation about, you know, the morality because it's so obvious. But let me say in Scientology, well, it's really obvious to me right now that David Miscavige is a fucking asshole, right? But it took me 10 years to actually acknowledge that. From the first moment of realizing something's really, really wrong here. Really wrong, like a systemically wrong. To, oh my God, I got to get out of here. David Miscavige doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and this place is not good, right? The Sea Org. That was 10 years for me to get that through my fucking head, right? To let it sink all the way into the moral layer. Oh, this is really, really not okay. You know, and that was me, 10 years it took for me to get there. To finally, you know, break free from what I can now see so obviously. Like, how did I not see it? It was right there the whole time because my morals wouldn't let me see it, you know? And that's where these guys are at with MAGA right now and Trump. Right. And the whole GOP thing, because you got to understand that it's not just about investment in Trump. It's years and years and years and years and years of de-investment in our government and our systems because of all that distrust I was talking about earlier, right? Which we've laid out before. Yeah. You know, sorry, just checking a couple of the comments there about Andrew. So this is powerful, powerful stuff, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's powerful stuff. That all being said, right, going on a whole tangent about the moral conflicts and dilemmas and all that stuff, when we come back to Marjorie Taylor-Greene, I don't see Marjorie Taylor-Greene as a moral player. She had all these years, right, to kind of wake up to what Trump is, and she didn't. And I don't think she's done so now. What I did not see in Marjorie Taylor-Greene was things that indicated to me. I didn't see attitude or words or actions that indicated to me that she had had a moral break from MAGA. All right, I didn't see that at all. I think if that had happened, she would have said things and done things slightly differently. The closest she came to an honest reappraisal of her past behavior was when she, on CNN, apologized for having missed the boat earlier, right? She did say that, right? For not for missing the boat, for being an attack dog, for being a GOP MAGA, basically bitch, right? On purpose, and she would have even probably described herself that way. She apologized for that, and that hit me as sincere. That I was like, wow, that's interesting that she did that. That was very, very interesting. You do not hear politicians apologizing very often. It's important when they do, and it's important to consider the context in which they do so. So I think that there was a degree of, yeah, I really shouldn't have been doing some of those things, because now I'm having to kind of come a little left now on the spectrum and come over and eat some humble pie and explain to you guys, yeah, I see that there are problems here, right? Like, I do believe she did those things, and I'm okay with the fact that she did those things. That was good. But I think that her party destroyed her through, my think is that somebody went and had a little chat with her, and explained how she needs to go disappear now. Right, because bucking MAGA is not wanted from the MAGA crowd right now. They're really fighting an existential battle right now. I hope everybody sees that. MAGA was never going to be the thing that was going to destroy America. This is the warm up round. Okay, anyway, we're not going on all that, so let's carry on here. What kind of pause music can you have when you need to get water? That's a good point. I have, maybe I should have put, here we go. How about if I throw that up? Or I could just go disappear for a while, and we could do that. All right, anyway, let's carry on here. Jono, hello, Jono. Do people fascinated by Scientology visit the Big Blue Building? Does that piss off staff? Well, I'm not sure how to answer that. Yes, people who are fascinated by Scientology do go visit Big Blue. That's the PAC base, the Los Angeles location. And does it piss off the staff? I guess it depends on what you mean. It does not piss off the staff that people come and express interest in Scientology. It pisses off the staff that people come and catcall the staff, or antagonize them, or tease them, right? Or try to film them and catch them out or something, right? That pisses them off. It would piss off anybody. Yeah. Okay. X-Scion. Who's your favorite TV show or chef? Do you like the most sciencey instructional shows? Oh, okay, cool. Great questions. My favorite shows for cooking are Guy's Grocery Games. I really love Next Level Chef. I like Gordon Ramsay's stuff. I like what Gordon Ramsay does, but I don't like all his shows by a long shot. He's very camera hungry, and boy, does that guy have a lot of fucking shows. And Gordon Ramsay is doing food that is not really accessible to everybody every day of the week kind of stuff, right? Whereas Guy Fieri's Grocery Games gives you lots more very practical, day-to-day, what could I do as a regular Joe in my kitchen, right? Sometimes they bring in the high-level chefs there and they do the fancy stuff, the elevated dishes and whatnot. But, a fancier version of, waffles or a chicken dinner or something is something I can aspire to, right? I can't aspire to some of the crap that's on some of the Gordon Ramsay cooking shows, because they're throwing the caviar and the high expensive ingredients in, and they do that on Guy's show sometimes too, but more often than not they're doing these $20 challenges, or you only get 5 things in your cart that you get to make the whole dish with, right? So choose wisely. And I love watching stuff like that because it gives me so many ideas of stuff to cook here at home. I have learned so much. I mean, bacon jam, for example, you're making jam out of bacon, right? Like, that's not something I knew how to do. And I saw that thrown together a couple times, right? You know, you get some chopped up bacon and you throw some oil and you throw some butter and you throw some maple syrup and brown sugar and things together and you cook it a certain way and you get this wonderful jam. It's bacon, right? You can throw it on your hamburgers, you can throw it on your eggs, you can do anything with it. It's awesome, right? And that's not elevated cooking, that's just fun cooking. And I learned how to do that, you know, on guys' shows. So that's the kind of stuff I like to watch. As far as science-y instructional shows, we watch documentaries and stuff, but there's nothing I'm connected to or watching regularly that is science instruction as such. I'm not really that guy that I have anything I'm watching regularly. Trying to think right now. There's not even really any scientists I particularly follow closely. Yeah. Do you? Yeah. I will say this about cooking shows, just to throw this back in on the mix, is I do like it when it's more than just the recipe. I like it when they explain kind of what's going on with the food and stuff, because you start realizing that really high-level chefs and really high-level cooking people are chemists. They really are talking and understanding the processes more from a chemical process point of view of what the heat, you know, when you apply heat in a certain way to this chemical, it does this thing, it caramelizes. Whereas if you apply it to this thing, it does this other thing, right? So you become an expert in all these substances, then it just happens to be that all the substances are edible. Okay, Lutz. Hey, Lutz, what do you think of platonic or non-sexual love? I find I can't really fall for another man if there isn't at least a minimum of physical attraction and arousal. Yeah, I think you can have intense feelings of care and love for another human being without it being romantic. But it's going to be very, very individual for people. You know, love is a fascinating and super, super complicated set of feelings because it integrates admiration, care, longing, or one affinity, like literally degree of closeness, right? It integrates so many things. Future efforts at, you know, see, because attraction's not a choice. Attraction is built into us. It's not what we're attracted to has absolutely almost nothing to do with our conscious choices. There's things going on under the hood that drive physical attraction that we don't consult with or get to have a say in. This is one of the reasons why, and it's built that way on purpose within us. I can say that one of the things that's most interesting about attraction is how it's built into us to biologically avoid being attracted to our closest relatives or kin, right? And I don't even pretend to understand all the things that are, all the safeguards and stuff that are built into us to avoid, you know, familial attraction. But it's interesting to go there because you start seeing, when you look into that stuff, how other species do it, you know, with pheromones like smell and stuff like that. We have that. But we have it in different ways because we're so socially tuned. We're not just, you know, victims of our physical needs, right? We have social influences and independent thinking that can drive our attraction too. So it's a big medley mix of stuff that ends up in a product of, oh, I want to be with this person, right? Those feelings of that come from all different places. So I very much believe that there is platonic or non-sexual love. I think you can be madly, madly in love with somebody without wanting to in any way interact with them physically other than, you know, camaraderie touching, right? You know, maybe hugging at the most. There are creative partnerships that are like this. They bond on creativity or songwriting or filmmaking or, you know, playwriting or creative purposes, right? People bond on hobbies and stuff or on shared interests, we can say, in a way that is not a physical attraction, but is legit love. You know, I think of Portlandia, that show, that TV show. The two guys, the two people who created that show, were, you know, in a platonic relationship, loving relationship, right? I think about certain I think about artists who, you know, partnerships and stuff, people who get together over long periods of time who have working relationships that could be described as non-sexual love in a way, right? And how hard those relationships can break when the love goes away. I think of Hall & Oates right now, right, as an example of that. Two people who came together creatively and for decades produced incredible music, and then had a falling out that was spectacular, right? And there was nothing sexual about their love for each other, but I would absolutely describe Hall & Oates as two people who, as artists, you know, loved each other in a mutually artistic relationship, right? So those are some of my thoughts about that. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Oh, cool. Well, raise a village. You're welcome. I'm glad I could help with that. Okay. Lutz also asks, as we're coming to the last 10 minutes of the show here, what do you think of assisted self-termination as in going beyond the veil? Thinking about the Kessler twins going bye-bye this week. Well, I don't know anything about the Kessler twins, so I cannot comment on that. I didn't see that story or know anything about it. But I can say that that assisted self-termination is a choice that people can and should have the freedom to make. I feel bad for people who want to end their lives. I feel that it's sad that somebody wants to take the one experience of this that they have in this form, this version of themselves, and end it because it's too painful or difficult for them or for whatever other reasons they have. It makes me sad because there's so much opportunity and joy to be experienced in this. And every single time I've been there, I've always been so incredibly thankful that I was able to move past those feelings and find joy and hope in life again. So I feel sorry for and sad for people who get to that place in their lives. I also understand that there are certain circumstances where it is, I can completely understand. There's some where I go, I don't know. But when people, for example, I've thought long and hard about this, you know, when people contract a terminal illness, for example, and they're on their way out and they have X number of months or X number of years, but that survival for them is going to be painful and a life of misery and drudgery, keeping themselves alive until the bitter end. And I can see why in a circumstance like that, people would consider, you know, termination as a viable, the choice they want to make for themselves. And quite honestly, when it comes to quality of life issues like that, it's their life. So while I might feel sad for their choice, I will never, ever believe or think that it's not their choice to make. You know, I always thought it was so unbelievably ridiculous to outlaw, you know, suicide. Like, you're breaking the law. What are you talking about? You know, like, one, why would a person even care? And two, you know, to what end? How are you going to prosecute that law? You know, I always thought it was the most ridiculous, moralistic nonsense. So it's hard. It's a hard one, right? It's not like there's easy answers there because people come at it from a lot of different moral places. But life is not, I don't know. Life is a sacred, unique, and special thing that should be valued for the immense uniqueness that it is. Whether we understand what it is, whether we agree that, you know, it's a spiritual thing or a biological thing or some other thing that we don't even have words for yet, you know, 100 years, 200, 300, 400 years from now, who knows what people are going to think about this stuff compared to what we think about it now. They might have ways of thinking about this that that are just completely beyond us right now, and that make all of our arguments absolutely kindergarten level stupid and silly, right? For all we know. Who knows where we're going? But at the end of the day, an individual life is about choices. A life could be described as a series of choices. And the choice to end the life has got to be one of those choices if you're going to have any pretense at all that you have agency or control. You have got to be able to have the power to say, I'm done. And those are my thoughts on it, right? Outside of any specific context or example of that, those are my thoughts about it. Okay, cool. Let's see if I can do our final emailed question really quickly here. This is actually out of the comment section from a few weeks ago. Somebody asked this. No one answers this question for me. How do cults end? I was referring more to the cult of Trump and the dominance of the alt-right. Okay. If you're wondering what it's going to take for the alt-right to go away, it's going to be time. Cults, like ideological political movements, do not die. They morph and change into something else. They don't die. Groups like Scientology eventually die off because the belief system stops being believed in. And after a series of events or enough time has passed, the books disappear, the material disappears, and it's just something forgotten in the dust of time, right? In the history books. That takes a long, long time. Our racial memory and our ability to write things down and keep things in memory is really, really good right now. We are really good at permanence of things, right? In the past, not so much. There are things that have vanished from this earth that are gone forever. And if they come back, we're not going to know it's a comeback. We're going to think it's a new thing because we lost all records of it ever existing. There have been thousands and thousands of movements and groups and clubs and efforts over the centuries that we've been around that are gone, and nobody has any idea they ever existed at all. Eventually, Scientology will be something like that, right? Eventually, all of these things that we're experiencing right now will be that. Sometimes it takes longer than for some parts to stay in our memory longer than others. And it's really hard to know what's going to give something permanence in history because you don't know what the priorities of the future are going to be. You have no idea. And whatever you think they're going to be, you're wrong, right? You have no idea. Neither do I. So we can only really guess at this stuff. But as far as as far as how cults end, they implode, or they're taken apart, or they fade, right? Cults disappear. I don't mean to like blow this question off, but I really I'm trying to be clear about the fact that there isn't anything special about how cults begin or how cults end versus any other group, right? How long has the Sisters of the Revolution been around? Well, since the Revolution, and they're still around. Right? So as long as people want to keep these things alive in their memory is really the answer to the question. And as long as the values of the group or its goals still have relevance, then people still find reasons to believe in it. And it's impossible to know going into the future what people are going to think in the future, and that's the challenge of the whole thing. So I know it's a little bit of a punt of an answer, but at least it is an answer. Let me know if that didn't work for you. Thanks a lot, everybody, for coming around and listening to me gabber on at a mad rate. We did a full 2 hours today. I'm going to click out of here so you can fly over to the Aftermath channel and watch Claire or Phil or Mark and all of them go on at a mad rate about all of this. Thanks for your viewership. Thanks for your support. Always appreciate it. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.